In this video, I'll be talking about the effects of nutrition on our mental health and mood. Before we talk about how nutrition can influence our mood, let's go over some of the mechanisms behind our mental health. First, let's review the mechanisms involved in stress. Stress is a physiological response to a perceived threat that increases the body's ability to evade danger. The stress response originates from the limbic system in the brain, which is composed of the amygdala, hypothalamus, and hippocampus, as well as other parts, shown here in this diagram. In a stress response, the pituitary gland, which is attached to the hypothalamus, sends chemical messages to the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys. In response, the adrenal glands release stress hormones called adrenaline and cortisol into the bloodstream. Adrenalines are a type of fast-acting molecule that increase the amount of oxygen and sugar going to our muscles and our brain so that we can better evade a perceived threat. Now, there are two types of adrenalines, epinephrine and norepinephrine. Together, these hormones work to increase the amount of oxygen and glucose getting to our brain and our muscles by opening up our airways, increasing our blood pressure, and accelerating our heart rate. They also slow down non-essential functions like digestion and trigger the liver to convert our long-term energy stores into the form of glucose, which can be used up quickly by the muscles and the brain. Cortisol, another stress hormone, is a slower-acting hormone that changes gene expression to better handle stress in the future. It does so by binding to nuclear receptors, which are receptors inside our cell and in our nucleus. Nuclear receptors regulate our gene expression. These stress hormones reduce non-essential functions in the body by shifting resources from the immune system, reproductive system, and gastrointestinal system to the muscles and the brain. This reduces inflammation, which is an immune response in the body. Cortisol reduces inflammation by binding to the glucocorticoid receptor in cells. The glucocorticoid receptor is a nuclear receptor inside the cell that regulates the immune system and inflammation. While cortisol is an anti-inflammatory molecule, excessive cortisol release can lead to the glucocorticoid receptor becoming insensitive to cortisol and initiate inflammation at inappropriate times. This is how excessive cortisol and stress can actually increase inflammation. Now, let's talk about mechanisms involved in depression. Depression is a mood disorder characterized by low levels of neurotransmitters as well as inflammation in the brain. Depression often goes hand in hand with excessive cortisol release or hypercortisolemia. This may explain the connection between depression and inflammation. While there are several neurotransmitters associated with depression, I will only be talking about two in this video, serotonin and dopamine. Serotonin is an important chemical messenger or neurotransmitter involved with mood, sleep, and digestion. Dopamine is another neurotransmitter involved in motivation, memory, and movement. Both of these neurotransmitters play a critical role in regulating our mood and are often found in low levels in patients with anxiety and depression. Now that we understand the mechanisms behind stress and depression, let's look at different components of our diet that can affect our mood. Carbohydrates make up a large part of our diet and are found in almost every food that we eat, including dairy, grains, fruits, and vegetables. They are made up out of monosaccharides, which are broken down to be used as essential forms of energy for our cells. There are two types of carbohydrates, simple carbs and complex carbs. Simple carbohydrates are made out of one or two monosaccharides and are found in candies, table sugar, and refined flours. Complex carbs, on the other hand, are made out of more than two saccharides and are found in a variety of foods including whole grains, oats, beans, legumes, and vegetables. Complex carbs take longer to be broken down and taken up into cells because they're much larger and contain more monosaccharides than simple sugars. This means that our blood glucose stays steadier for longer because our body is still breaking down complex carbohydrates hours after we finish a meal. The types of carbohydrates we consume can have a profound impact on our mood and mental health. Eating only simple sugars can cause blood sugar to drop rapidly, triggering epinephrine release, which causes stress. Excessive epinephrine release from eating too many simple sugars can cause lingering stress and hypercortisolemia. Fats and fatty acids also play a large role in our mood and mental health. Fatty acids are components of the fats that we get in our diet and are essential for many functions in cells. They are metabolized in the body to form eicosanoids, which are molecules that regulate inflammation. There are 3 types of eicosanoids. There are prostaglandins, which recruit white blood cells, thromboxanes, which control blood clotting, and leukotrienes, which regulate allergies. There are 2 types of essential fatty acids that we get in our diet, called omega-6 and omega-3s. The names of these fatty acids are derived from the placement of a double bond on their carbon chains. Omega-3 fatty acids have a double bond 3 carbons away from its initial, or omega, carbon. Omega-6 fatty acids have a double bond 6 carbons away from its initial carbon. Omega-6 fatty acids are found in vegetable oils, seeds, and nuts. In the body, they're metabolized to form arachidonic acid, which increases inflammation, blood clotting, and allergies by recruiting pro-inflammatory eicosanoids. Another important type of fatty acid are omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3s are a type of fatty acid found in fish, soybean oil, and nuts like flaxseed and walnuts. They contain an acid called eicosapentaenoic acid, or EPA. EPA is an anti-inflammatory molecule that inhibits the activity of eicosanoids like the prostaglandins, thromboxanes, and leukotrienes. Omega-3s are also important because EPA gets converted into DHA, or docosahexaenoic acid, in the brain. DHA is a major fatty component of the myelin sheath which surrounds and insulates our neurons, promoting healthy brain functioning, growth, and development. It is recommended that we get about 1 gram of omega-3 fatty acid for every 4 grams of omega-6 fatty acid to maintain balance of inflammation. After all, we depend on inflammatory processes to fight off infections and clot our blood when we get injured. However, going over this 1-to-4 ratio may cause an imbalance of inflammation in our bodies and actually worsen our mood, as we remember that depression and anxiety are linked to inflammation. Given the facts that omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, and many people following a Western diet are not getting the recommended amount, several studies have explored the possibility of omega-3s as a treatment option for depression and anxiety. In fact, studies show that 1.5 to 2 grams of omega-3 supplementation per day can alleviate symptoms of anxiety and depression. Another component of our diet that can influence our mood are amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. There are over 500 amino acids found in nature. However, only 20 forms exist in the human body. Most amino acids can be made within our bodies. However, some can only be acquired through our diet. Amino acids play an important role in our mood and mental health because they can be used to synthesize important neurotransmitters in our brain. Some of the important neurotransmitters that amino acids are used to synthesize are serotonin and dopamine. Tryptophan is an important amino acid found in many foods, including chicken, turkey, fish, cheese, seeds, and milk. It's an essential amino acid, meaning that it can't be made in the body and must be acquired through diet. Tryptophan is extremely important because it's used to make the neurotransmitter serotonin, which is the biological precursor to melatonin. As I said before, serotonin is used for mood regulation, digestion, and sleep regulation. Melatonin, which is produced from serotonin, also induces sleep. So how does this relate to depression and stress? Well, patients with depression are found to have lower levels of tryptophan that correlate with their low levels of serotonin. This makes sense, as people with low levels of serotonin may not be getting enough tryptophan to synthesize it. This could affect our mood, sleep, and even appetite and digestion. It's suggested to get about 3 to 6 grams of tryptophan to improve mood. Dopamine, another important neurotransmitter associated with stress and depression, is synthesized using amino acids phenylalanine and tyrosine. Phenylalanine gets converted into tyrosine in the body, which is further converted into dopamine. While tyrosine can be synthesized in the body, phenylalanine can only be acquired through the diet. It's found in protein-rich foods including meat, dairy products, and soy products. By getting adequate amounts of protein in our diet, we're able to get all of these important amino acids that can help us regulate our mood through their use as precursors to neurotransmitters. Now that we've looked at the effect of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats on our mood and mental health, let's look at some essential vitamins that affect our cognitive processing as well as our mood. First, let's talk about folate. Folate is found in many foods, including dark green leafy vegetables, beans, peanuts, legumes, and eggs. Folate deficiency has been associated with depression. Folate has a complex relationship with serotonin and dopamine production. In the body, folate gets converted into S-adenosylmethionine. S-adenosylmethionine controls the production of an important cofactor called tetrahydrobiopterin, which is needed for the production of serotonin and dopamine. Magnesium is another important vitamin for our mood and cognition. Foods rich in magnesium include spinach, almonds, pumpkin seeds, peanuts, and even dark chocolate. Magnesium is extremely important because it helps maintain electrochemical balance in our brain, allowing us to perform a variety of cognitive functions as well as regulate our own mood. It's no wonder that patients with depression and stress have been found to have low levels of magnesium, and their symptoms actually improve after magnesium supplementation in some studies. Another important vitamin for mood regulation is vitamin B12. B12 is found in animal products, including fish, meat, poultry, eggs, and dairy. Vitamin B12 deficiencies have been linked to anxiety and depression. B12 is especially important for its role in converting folate into a usable form in the body. Without it, folate would be trapped in its unusable form, methyl tetrahydrofolate. As we discussed before, folate is important for the synthesis of dopamine and serotonin. Therefore, without B12, we would have a folate deficiency. Even if we're eating enough in our diet, we would not be able to convert it into usable forms. Now that we've talked about mechanisms and components of our diet that can affect our mood, let's talk about some things we can do to improve our mood and reduce stress. First, we can eat complex carbs so our blood sugar doesn't get too low too fast and trigger epinephrine release. This will reduce our stress. We can also try to increase the amount of omega-3s in our diet to adhere to a ratio of 1 gram of omega-3 per 4 grams of omega-6. This will reduce our stress, inflammation in the brain, and symptoms of depression. We can also be mindful of our intake of essential amino acids like tryptophan, phenylalanine, and tyrosine, which are needed for important neurotransmitters. We can also try to make sure to get an adequate amount of essential vitamins like B12, magnesium, and folate. By understanding that nutrition impacts our mood, cognitive function, and mental health, and understanding how it impacts these functions, we can better take care of ourselves on a daily basis by making smart choices about the foods that we eat. Thank you for watching, and please feel free to go through my resources as well as conduct some research of your own on how our nutrition can impact our mood.